May 22nd, 2020. Joe here at the Wake Up Channel. We have the Joe Biden interview from the Breakfast Club. You know him, you love him. Charlemagne is always asking interesting questions to anyone that's on his show. Even though I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a liberal or anything, I don't agree with all of his politics. He does ask some good questions, especially when it's concerning the black community. And we know that Joe Biden and all, a good portion of the Democrats pander to black people. We know this. Remember the interview that Charlemagne had on with Hillary Clinton, where she brought out the hot sauce and all that kind of stuff. Said she took hot sauce wherever she went. We're going to get into this. The first clip is a good question about kind of where Joe Biden has been for this entire time.
You know, one thing I've been critical about is I feel like you've been like MIA during this global pandemic. You know, it's people like Governor Cuomo here in New York who have become political stars simply because we see and hear from them every day. So I'm just like, I'm wondering how you're going to energize people and win a campaign from the House.
Well, I tell you what, I'm following the rules, man. True. Number one, I'm keeping the rules. My governor says he doesn't want us out. I haven't been out. I wear my mask. I have a mask. I got Secret Service outside. I walk outside.
So he just kind of goes on and on about where he has been. Of course, he's been in his basement the entire time. He hasn't really been in the public sphere talking about the issues that really matter because he's been following orders. He's been wearing his mask. We could go on and on about why wearing a mask just doesn't make any really any good logical sense. We have had Fauci going back and forth about whether we should be wearing a mask. We have doctors that are saying yes, and we have doctors that are saying no. We just simply can't figure out what to do about whether to wear a mask. Here's something simple. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't feel like you want to wear a mask, this is a free country. You don't have to wear a mask if you don't really want to. But the fact is that if Joe Biden was president right now, hypothetically, he would have to be in the public sphere. He couldn't be doing all of his videos from the basement of the White House. He's saying that he wants to be very presidential, but he's still in his basement, all safe in his basement because it's easier for him to do that because he's always putting his foot in his mouth. We're going to move on to the next clip where he is basically making the claim that if he was president and if everyone would have just simply listened to him, then we would have fewer deaths. We're going to get into some articles that are going to be proving this wrong, but we'll get into that.
Right now, there's a study out of Columbia University and the Disease Control Center up there. They pointed out that if he had listened to me and others and acted just 1 week earlier to deal with this virus, there'd be 36,000 fewer people dead. And you guys are wondering, what's he doing? Come on, man.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, man. Let's actually go over to biospace.com. This was published back in March of this year, and it's a comparison of 2009 H1N1 pandemic virus versus a 2020 coronavirus pandemic. So let's just kind of read over this just for a moment. I had highlighted a few things here, and I'll read it if you can't actually read. I try to blow in as much as possible. The virus in 2009 pandemic is considered to be quite different from the typical H1N1 viruses that were circulating at the time, dubbed H1N1 PDM09. Very few young people had existing immunity to it, but about 1/3 of the people over 60 years of age had antibodies against it, probably from exposure to others older H1N1 viruses at sometimes in their lives. So this was completely different from the coronavirus COVID-19, which we know at this point it was constructed inside of a lab. It did not go from bat to human. That is an evolutionary leap of viruses. Actually, any virologist, and they will let you know very quickly that it takes a long time, hundreds of years probably, for these types of viruses to go from, especially new viruses, to go from animal to human. But they're not talking about that. It continues further here. This also meant that vaccinations for seasonal influenza offered very little protection against it. A vaccine for H1N1 PDM09 vaccine was manufactured, but not available in significant quantities until late November, well after the peak of the illness in the second wave of the disease had finished in the U.S. Very important here, the 2009 H1N1 pandemic originated in the United States before spreading around the world. Now, some people are saying that it originated in Mexico, which there is now proof of that. According to the U.S. Centers of Disease Control, of course, we can't really count on them for any legitimate information anyway, and prevention, the CDC. A later study suggested, which is the one I'm referring to, it was first diagnosed in humans in Mexico. Of course, the Democrats are all about not closing the borders. We'll get into that in a second as well. The CDC estimated that from April 12, 2009 to April 10, 2010, 1 year, there were 60.8 million H1N1 cases, 274,000 hospitalization, and 12,000 deaths in the U.S. alone. We are only at 89,000, 90,000, and we are already flattening the curve when it's coming to COVID-19. And COVID-19 is even more susceptible to being spread. It's more viral. But 60 million cases in the U.S. alone. They also estimate the worldwide 151,700 to 575,400 people died from H1N1. PDM09 during the first year, unusually about 80% of the deaths were in people younger than 65 years of age. So this was a completely different virus, but it infected a lot of people. Let's go on to the next article. Now, this was back 2009, April 30th, right? This was almost a month after this kind of broke out, right, in Mexico, very close. But Obama was against closing the border, and of course, if Obama was against closing the border, so was Joe Biden. Joe Biden's lying his butt off in this interview, and this is just a first example. Let me see. Let's get into the next clip here where he's talking about how this coronavirus has affected the black community. And we'll talk about that and where he is wrong on that as well.
I'm the guy that said we ought to take hard records and find out exactly how many people in the black community are getting COVID and are dying from it. And look what's happened. Now everybody's going, oh, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Let's actually move on a little bit quicker here. Biden releases plans focused on anti-African-American community. This racial disparities of COVID-19 impact. This was from May 4th. This was only a few weeks ago, right? Let's just go back to actually in April. This was, if you kid, it's not even listed. If you look at the hyperlink up here, it's from April 8th. And says, we're seeing tremendous evidence that African Americans are affected at a far greater percentage number than other citizens in the country, Trump said at his daily coronavirus press meeting Thursday. But why is it that African American community is so much numerous times more than anybody else? We want to find out the reason for it. Now, everyone at that point was calling this racist. It was actually Dr. Fauci who had said something specifically about this. Continuing on what Dr. Fauci said, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Ben Carson, Surgeon General. So this is what he was saying. This is what he was saying, paraphrasing. Well, it's actually a direct quote. One of the things we know in the African American community, there is a higher incidence of hypertension, a higher incidence of diabetes, asthma, and many other underlying conditions that we associate with higher mortality rates. So how is that racist to actually point out a specific fact about what is the prevalent morbidities in the black community? Now, this is a problem, obviously, but is it racist to point that out? It wasn't even Trump that was pointing that out. It was Dr. Fauci. And, of course, the Democrats are coddling Dr. Fauci, saying, hey, listen to Dr. Fauci. He is a god of medicine. Don't listen to any other scientists out there. Don't listen to any other doctors who are actually coming out and being banned left and right. Listen to Fauci. But now Biden wants to go back on his word on that and say that he was the one that was bringing this forward. Absolutely, that is not the truth. He only started talking about this month. Trump has been talking about that much longer than Biden. So we know that. Let's move on to the next clip here where it's saying that polls are an illusion.
Yeah, we know polls can be illusions, though. Like, we looked at all the polls in 2016, too, and look what happened.
Totally different, man. 2016 is totally different. What you had then is you had somebody who didn't know it all. They wanted to just change the system the way it was. He was the biggest change. He had no serious opposition that turned out to materialize. And so it's totally different. Right now, we're in a situation where it's like, that Carney show goes through town once and you find out there's no pee under any one of those 3 shells that get pushed around. Mm-hmm. Next time it comes back, what do? Next time.
Yeah, I don't know what Biden was actually talking about. He's talking about carnies and all this other kind of stuff. He actually was giving a really good thumbs up to Trump, because Trump was seen as the change that was needed. And that is why he was elected, for change. And that is exactly what he has done over the last 4 years. He has shooken everything up and changed things. He has revealed the deep state for what exactly it is. And, of course, Joe Biden is part of that deep state. Remember the 1994 crime bill for Bill Clinton. Guess who was the author of that? That was Joe Biden. We all know that now. We have to look back in history. Let's go to Joe Biden talking about his crime bill.
So, when you take a look at my record, people talk about the crime bill. Crime bill didn't increase mass incarceration. Other things increase mass incarceration. And the reason why, if you go back and look, and I know you talk about it, you go back and take a look. That's why you had the vast majority of the Black caucus at the time supporting the crime bill.
Yeah, let's actually look at the crime bill. This is from Wikipedia. This federal, there was a lot of different things that were part of this crime bill, including banning assault weapons. Now, he doesn't really want to talk about that. Remember when he was talking to that warehouse worker, said, "Hey, I don't represent you," right? He was saying that you're going to take away his guns. He is actually referring to the 1994 crime bill, where that was part of the crime bill, is banning all assault weapons and the semi-automatic weapons and so forth. That is exactly what Joe Biden wants to do, but that's not what this is really about. It's about incarcerations. So let's go back to Violent Offender Incarceration and Truth in Sentencing Incentives Grants Program. Title II of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994 provided incentive grants to build and expand correctional facilities to qualifying states. He wants to keep bringing up that this wasn't these prisoners weren't in federal prisons. Of course they weren't in federal prisons. They were committing state crimes. And this 1994 crime bill actually incentivized states to build more prisons, more for-profit prisons. This is a control state that the Joe Biden really wants. This is all that everyone's been talking about. This is what Joe Biden wants to put back on track. He wants to put everything back on track, to put more people in prison, to make everything illegal. He wants to ban the guns. He wants to take them out of your pockets. He wants to take everything out of your pockets, including all of your tax money too. If you don't believe it, look back in history. Look at what everything he has done. The crime bill put more people in prison. Period. End of story. I'm running short on time here. Let's go to the next clip where he wants to basically, I'll just let it speak for itself.
If you are in prison, if you are convicted of a crime, no one should be going to jail for a drug crime. Period. Nobody.
So no one should be going to jail for any type of drug crime, right? Does this include all of the gangsters and all of the mafia and all of the Mexican cartel that is bringing drugs into this country? All of the fentanyl overdoses. Remember the fentanyl big drug bust that had enough to kill, I don't know how it was, like 50 million people, 30 million people. There was enough fentanyl there to kill 30 million people. An entire country had enough in there. But according to Joe Biden, it doesn't really matter what the crime is. He says it right there. It doesn't matter what your crime is when it comes to drugs. Crack, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, doesn't matter. You don't have to go to prison. You shouldn't go to prison. But of course, Charlemagne actually gets to the point where, what we really want to hear about is marijuana. I mean, honestly, this is something that is important to me. We need to deschedularize it. We need to federally legalize it. It is ridiculous. It's about time. We'll get into that as well, a few articles, but let's listen to what Joe Biden has to say about that.
President Biden, I've read some of your Black agenda, and you say that you would decriminalize marijuana. What's the difference between legalizing it and decriminalizing it?
Because they're trying to find out whether or not there is any impact on the use of marijuana, not in leading you to other drugs, but what it affects. Does it affect long-term development of the brain? And we should wait till the studies are done.
Well, there have been plenty of studies done on marijuana. There have been ongoing government studies on marijuana, especially in Mississippi, where they've actually been growing marijuana the whole time, studying it the whole time. There have been so many, and of course, it's the FDA that is withholding a lot of this information. That's withholding a lot of the studies as well, especially when it comes to cancer and a lot of other serious illnesses, which marijuana does have a huge effect on. So this was from marijuanamovement.net. Joe Biden again says no to the marijuana legalization without more studies. Okay, so he said that, but let's go back to April. Actually, let's go back to 2010. 2010, of course, when he was vice president, he was all about not making it legal. Joe Biden disagrees with Pat Robertson, part of the religious movement there. Pat Robertson on pot. and a lot of other Republicans as well. He says, I still believe it's a gateway drug. I spent a lot of my life as chairman of the judiciary community dealing with this. I think it would be a mistake to legalize. This wasn't just back in 2010. And this is, don't make the argument that someone can make up, they can change their mind. Because looking back to what date was this? November 17th, 2019, not too long ago, right? 7 months ago. Marijuana is not a gateway drug. If Joe Biden doesn't know that, he shouldn't be president. Now, back in, I believe it was April of either this year or last year, he did a gaffe where he was talking about that it was a gateway drug. It says President Hopeful told a crowd in Las Vegas Religer Saturday that if elected, he would not legalize marijuana because he said there's not enough evidence as to whether or not it is a gateway drug. That was 6 months ago, so he's changed his stance in 6 months, right? But if you look at more articles a week from then, of course, he got a lot of backlash. Now he's just automatically changed his mind. And why? To pander to the black community. He went on there to pander to the black community. Again, this is what he did. Last clip. This is the most interesting one.
More questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with
I know that was a small one, but that was the one that was causing a lot of this to go viral. That if you have a problem with voting for Biden, then you're simply not black. So what about all of the masses and scores of the black community that actually does support this president? I'm not saying that they agree with everything that he says. I'm saying they agree with freedom. They agree with uncovering the deep state for what it is. They agree with the idea, and I'm not saying that Trump is anti-corporate. I'm anti-corporate. I don't believe in corporatism. This is something that a lot of conservatives are having a problem with right now, that they are stuck between communism, socialism, and corporatism, and they're stuck. And we're gonna talk about that another time. But this is disenfranchising a lot of those black voters, and a lot of black voters are actually, if you look at some of these comments I don't have time to actually go into it, but watch the video, go to YouTube, watch the video, look at some of the comments of the black community. They are not buying any of this BS that Joe Biden is selling. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.